Hi, welcome back to Mind Control.
I used to spend the night in hotel parking lots. What was I gonna do? I ain't had nowhere to stay, so I lived in the car. I had $35. And I said, come on, God, man, I've been trying to make this dream come true. You done left me out here like this. And I was crying so hard that he just said, I didn't like hear a voice or nothing, but he spoke to me in Harvey. He said, if you get up, I'm gonna take you places you ain't never been. Now I was finna quit. So I said, skip it. I'm gonna quit anyway. So I got in my car, I went to a payphone, and I was gonna call my dad. You remember back in the day where you could punch in a code and call your answering machine and get your messages? So I called, and I punched in the code, and it said, doop. He said, hey Steve, this is Chuck Sutton with Showtime at the Apollo. We saw a tape of you. You're very funny. If you could get here Sunday night, we'd love to put you on television. Call me back, let me know if you can make it. So I hung the phone up, I'm crushed. Cause my whole dream of being on TV, and I couldn't get to New York. I got $35. How am I gonna get to New York? I can't make it. So I'm standing there at the phone booth and tears just coming down my face. I said, God, so that must be a sign for me to go home. Cause this it, I ain't even got the money to go to the Apollo. My whole thing, I wanted to be on TV, I couldn't even make the dream come true. This is the most messed up moment. And so I said, man, let me call this dude back and see if he said this Sunday. Cause maybe he said next Sunday and I can hustle up a little bit of money or something. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but let me just call him back. So I called him back. Steve, this is Chuck Sutton, Showtime at the Apollo. We saw a tape of yours. You're very, very funny. Look, we have an opening Sunday night at Showtime at the Apollo. If you can make it, we'd love to put you on TV. I said, it's this Sunday. Before I hit the button, I heard, doop, you have another message. That wasn't there before. So I punched my code in, I listened to the second message. It said, Steve Harvey, this is Tom Sobel from the Comedy Caravan. This was a Thursday. He said, I have a gig in Jacksonville, Florida on Friday night that pays $150. If you can get there Friday night, you'll make $150. So I called him back and I said, hey Tom, did you get a gig away? He said, no, it's still available. He said, can you get there? I said, I'm in Pensacola, Florida. I'm 3.5 hours away. So I drive to Jacksonville, Florida, and that night I made the 150. The club owner said, man, you funnier than the guy we hired. If you stay tomorrow night, I'm gonna give you another $150. So now I got $300 now. So I get on the phone, I call Chuck Sutton. I say, hey man, is the gig still available at Showtime at the Apollo? He said, yeah, we got one opening left. I said, I'll be there. So I called Eastern Airlines, who used to be open back then. They had a special for $99 going from Jacksonville, Florida to New York round trip. So I parked my car at the airport. I got it. Got on plane, flew. Everything I had was in 2 bags. Got to the Apollo. I said, hey man, I'm here. I got there at 11 o'clock in the morning. He said, you can't stay here because you don't come on to the late show tonight. I said, man, I ain't got nowhere to go. I said, if you just let me stay in this building, man, I ain't gonna move around nothing. I ain't got nowhere to go. I'm in Harlem, I can't go back out here. I got these 2 bags. I got victim wrote all over me, man, so. He said, all right, if you go upstairs, don't come down. So he put me in a dressing room on the 6th floor. So that's where all the comedians were. So I stayed up there. I got hungry around 3 o'clock, and I couldn't take it no more. So I went back downstairs, a dude named Alton Liston. I said, hey man, he said, man, I thought I told you, don't come down them damn steps. I said, hey man, I'm just hungry, man. I said, let me go to that KFC I saw on the corner, just let me get some chicken. I'll come right back. He said, man, if you ain't back in 20 minutes, you ain't getting in this building. So I went, bought me some chicken, came back. So the comedians started coming in the building. They started coming up on the 6th floor. So I meet this guy named D.L. Hughley. I introduced myself, he introduced himself. I'm sitting there, another guy come in named Dwayne Johnson. Then this other dude walked in named Jamie Foxx. And I introduced myself. We don't know each other, ain't none of us famous. It's 1991, man. They gave everybody the lineup. I was on the last show of the night. I don't go on to 11 at night. I done had this 4 pieces of chicken. I'm starving, man. That chicken done wore off. I'm nervous, man. I'm about to throw up. D.L. Hughley went downstairs. D.L. Hughley got booed off. Dwayne Johnson got booed off. Jamie Foxx went down there and got booed. They booed Jamie, then Jamie started singing. And then they started clapping. And Jamie had their ass, then he went back to them jokes, and they got his ass. So I'm walking down the steps and I see Jamie sitting on the steps. I said, hey man, hang in there. He said, man, that ain't never happened to me before, man. This is crazy. This is Jamie Foxx, man, one of the most talented people in all of comedy. And now, you don't even know how nervous I am, man. I can't even. My breathing is shot because these dudes been booed. So I walk out. I had wrote this joke. Mike Tyson had got in a fight in Harlem with this heavyweight named Mitch Green. Mike Tyson had hit the dude in the eye in the store. Now he was on the news, his eye was swollen. So the joke I wrote was, they was interviewing Mitch Green and he was telling everybody what happened, but his eye took over the interview. And I wrote this joke that his eye started talking and was just, I tell you what happened. The heavyweight champ's fist is coming towards my face. I just said, Lord, Lord, Lord. And I wrote this whole joke about this dude's eyeball talking. And when the punch came, and all this here, the Apollo, man, they went crazy. They lost their mind. I got a standing ovation, man. I walked off stage, man, just started crying. I couldn't believe it. They paid me. I made $750 for being on TV for one night. I'd never made $750 telling jokes in one night. And so that was my first television appearance. A couple weeks later, Sinbad was the host of the show. He got this job on Different World. And so he quit. And so Mark Curry became the host. And then Mark Curry got hanging with Mr. Cooper, and he quit. And they came to me and said, would you come back to New York and host amateur night for us to just try you out? Oh, ain't no problem. And so I went to New York, I hosted amateur night, and I was killing. But every time we went to commercial break, I was supposed to let the warm-up act take over like Ruben does. But I knew not to let the warm-up act do that because he would change the attitude of the crowd because the Apollo was a wild place. So I stayed out there. I did the warm-up and the hosting. And I created a bond with that audience. And that's how I got on TV. It was my very first TV show. I hosted Showtime at the Apollo. I ended up being the longest running host in the history of Showtime Apollo. I did that show for 8 years. Nobody ever did it for 8 years. And that was my turn back moment. See, in your life, everybody has a turn back moment. You have a moment where you can go forward or you can give up. But the thing you have to keep in mind before you give up is that if you give up, the guarantee is it will never happen. That's the guarantee of quitting, that it will never happen, no way under the sun. The only way the possibility remains that it can happen is if you never give up no matter what. Because God is always coming. He's never too late. At your worst moment, look man, when they told me I had to be in New York, I saw no way I could get there. But that God don't. He make the phone ring. I end up in Florida, I make $300. Then I go to New York, I make $750. Almost got $1,000 out of nowhere. That's what happened to me. That was my moment of never giving up. That's when I first learned that faith was everything, that you have to remain faithful.
We teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are. So if you're wanting to raise up some great leaders in your group, guess what? The first thing you need to do is be a great leader. Let me explain that to you. Let me just sit down for just a moment. At my age, it's a highlight. Let me just sit down for a moment and let's go back to the law of the lid. Remember when your lid was a 5, what was your company going to be? It was going to be a... Absolutely. The lid says you can't have a 6, you can't have a 7, you can't have an 8, you can't have a 9. You're a 5 leader. A 5 leader doesn't have 7s. A 5 leader doesn't have 8 companies. 5 leader doesn't have 9. 5 leaders have 4 companies. What kind of a person will you attract? If you're a 5 leader, you don't attract 6s, 7, 8, 9, 10. Can I tell you something? 8s don't want to follow 5. 8s go meet a 5 and they say, whoops, Mr. Magoo. So how do you attract better people? Lift your lid. If you're a 5, you get 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. If you're a 6, you get 5, 4s, 3s, 2s. If you're a 7, you get 6. If you're an 8, you got this? Stanford research says, just came from there. Stanford research says that 85% of everything you know, you learn visually. 85%. The reason I say that the first rule of 5 in leadership is leading yourself is because visual example is the most powerful leadership tool. Axe to cut down your tree. Trust me with that. James Allen said, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're not anxious to improve themselves, and they therefore remain bound. The first person that you should teach leadership values to is you.
Some of the obstacles you're up against may seem like they have the upper hand. The sickness is bigger. You've had the addiction a long time. Feels like that trouble has you surrounded. But when it's your time, like with them, it's not going to leave gradually. It's not going to improve a little here, a little there. It's going to leave suddenly, like it's in a panic, like it's fleeing for its life. Well, Joel, this sounds encouraging, but I don't believe it's going to happen quickly for me. I've been dealing with this for a long time. You're right. It won't happen for you. This is for believers. This is for people that will let the seed take root. People that will dare say, God, I agree with what you said, that you will hasten your word to perform it. Lord, I believe for a quick work. I believe enemies are hurrying out of my way. I believe I'm going to see a rapid turnaround. A friend of mine worked for this company where his supervisor wasn't treating him right. He was jealous of him. My friend had a great attitude. I never heard him complain. He just kept doing the right thing, even though this supervisor would try to discredit him and make him look bad. This went on for several years. The supervisor was in his early 40s, been with the company almost 20 years. Looked like my friend would always have to deal with this. But one Monday morning, he went to work. The owner of the company called my friend in and said that the supervisor was leaving and this owner wanted him to have his position. My friend asked, when was this going to happen? When was he going to leave? The owner said, he left last Friday. You're the supervisor starting right now. God knows how to cause people to hurry out of your way, to do things quickly, things that you didn't see coming. That supervisor could have been there another 30 years, but he suddenly left. Quit worrying about who's in front of you and how it's never going to work out. God can quickly change things, quickly promote you, quickly heal you, quickly free you. And yes, I know some things take time. We have to outlast what's coming against us. But you're going to come into these moments where God does a quick work. Now, instead of complaining, well, Joel, I don't know about for me. I don't think I'll ever get well. I'll never meet the right person. Don't turn it around. Father, thank you that my health is about to suddenly improve. Thank you that this addiction is not permanent. It's about to quickly turn around. Thank you that this depression is not how my story ends. It's about to hurry out of my way. That's not just being positive, that's releasing your faith. That's what allows God to speed things up.
Pliability is an indication of experience. When you've been through enough, you become pliable, you become adaptable, you become relatable. When you've been through enough, you know how to rock with it, and you know how to roll with it, and you know how to shift with it. When you've been through enough and enough has passed through you, you've changed in your composite that you might look like dirt, but you're pliable. Somebody write on the timeline, I'm pliable. I know how to abase and abound. I'm in season and out of season. I know how to survive good times and bad times. I know how to work with whatever's thrown at me. I can make it through the winter and I can make it through a hot summer. I'm pliable. If it rains, I got a raincoat. If it's hot, I'll take it all. I know how to be pliable. Whatever season I'm in, I can be content because I'm not just dirt, I'm clay. This is the silent sermon of God. Can I preach this morning? I got up out the bed this morning to bring you a word this morning. I got out of the bed to impart unto you that if enough has passed over you, and enough has been planted in you, and enough has withered around you, it has affected your ability to develop the elasticity that it takes to be a survivor. Let me hear from my survivors. I want to hear from my survivors. Oh, no. I don't want to hear from the saints. I want to hear from the survivors. The saints can talk later. I want to hear from the survivors. A lot has passed over you, and you're still here. Survivors, make some noise. Yes. And so I thought I would start this sermon by talking about the potter's hand. For the potter's hand has reached down into the ground and extracted from the dirt the clay he thought most useful. And the reason I want you to see this image of the stooping potter is that when Jeremiah is looking at the potter stooping down into the ground to pull up the clay, my mind went back to God.
Thing is, I was raised in a culture of the quiet professional, and we don't talk about what we do. And so that book, obviously I was writing a book with my brother Leif Babin, and we talked about that for a long time before we actually said, okay, let's do it. And what we knew that we needed to do was, number one, represent the SEAL teams the way that we thought they and knew they should be represented, and also make sure that we point out that the SEAL teams are just one military organization of all the military who are out there risking their lives and making incredible sacrifices for this nation and for our freedom. And so we wrote heavily about the forces in the soldiers and Marines that we worked alongside of in the Battle of Ramadi. And I think the other piece is, from my brothers that are still in the SEAL teams, when they started reading the book, and the reason that I think it's accepted by within the SEAL community is because we didn't try and make ourselves out to be something that we weren't. The guy that's in that book that's me. That's what I was like when I was in the SEAL team. That's what I was like now. I didn't embellish anything and you've read the book. The book is not about how great I was. The book is actually, a lot of it is actually about mistakes that I made and what I learned from it, and what mistakes Leif made and what he learned from them. And so that's why I think there was a little fear with that book in how my brothers in the SEAL teams would react to it. But once guys started reading it, the feedback was awesome. And so for the kids' book, I did no fear at all, none. I'm writing what I want, and I know that kids out there need it. And Discipline Equals Freedom, same thing. I'm doing what I want, and I'm putting word out there for people to the best of my ability to try and help them sort themselves out and move further along in their lives. And it's through lessons that I've learned, because I've been I'm far from perfect. And it's the same thing with my podcast. My podcast is what I want to talk about, and people have given me all kinds of advice since the beginning on what I should do and shouldn't do. And I always listen to people's advice, but I go with my gut of what I want to talk about, what people I want to talk to, what events in history I want to cover. There's been people tell me, don't make it too long, bring on guests so you're not the only voice, and don't talk about all this violence and horrible things. And if you listen to my podcast, it's very long. There's not many guests, and I talk about some pretty awful and horrendous things that have happened in the world. So I'm not afraid of doing what I'm doing, because I think I'm doing it for the right reasons.
thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section. Please also like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and families. Please watch our other motivational videos. Thank you again.
I mean, how many changes took place in 1 year? No matter what we want to think, no matter what we want to believe, we all changed in 2020.
My life changed, my mind changed, my habits changed, my discipline changed. I am not who I was. I want to know, is there anybody in here who can definitively say with evidence by looking at your behavior, not your clothes, that you are not who you were?
Some of you, you're even watching this right now, and in just less than 10 months, your whole life looks completely different. And you weren't expecting that. You weren't planning on that. You had no idea those changes were coming. Suppose the question is, did you change for the worse, or did you change for the better? Because everyone changes, but not everyone improves.
Successful people know how to change with the times. They don't get stuck in a rut, doing the same thing the same way year after year. They're constantly evaluating where they are. They make adjustments so they can improve. We have to stay open for change. We can't get so set in our ways that we won't try anything new. This is why many people don't have any enthusiasm. There's no freshness in their life. Every time an opportunity comes for change, for promotion, because they're not used to it, they shrink back. They don't realize that's what's keeping them from going to the next level.
I had a change in my heart. I had a change in my mind. I had a change in my behavior. When he got to changing me, I thought completely differently than I do today. You can see it in my walk. You can see it in my talk. You can see it in my behavior. People I used to run with, I don't run with anymore. Places I used to go, I don't go no more. I know I've been changed. I know I've been.
But how many of you know that when you get tired, when you get fatigued, when you get desperate, you start lowering your standards pretty quick? Like, you ever woken up in the night mad thirsty? Dude, you make your way to the refrigerator, you open up that refrigerator, the light hits you like it's heaven. Because if you get thirsty enough, you'll drink anything. Some of us have been on the faith journey for a while, and we have gotten tired on our journey. Yet when you start to get tired, it's a bad moment to make big decisions, because you will lower your standards. Some of us in this room, we have settled for second best because we traded an eternal blessing for short-term gratification.
Napoleon said, number one, a leader needs unwavering courage. I don't know if I totally agree with the unwavering part of this or not, because sometimes our courage does waver a little. It bend but not break. Courage mounts up, and then sometimes we have the doubts that creep in, and we reach a little deeper to find that courage that overcomes our doubts and our fears. So I would probably debate a little bit with Napoleon on this unwavering courage, because sometimes courage does waver. But as long as it stays, as long as in the end there it is to serve you, the courage to do what you didn't think you could do, the courage to step into territory that might be a little unfamiliar, the courage to talk to somebody you don't know, the courage to attempt conducting a meeting, the courage to give your first testimonial, the courage to solve problems you couldn't solve before, that kind of courage. Courage to stand up when it's sort of dark in your corner, the courage to do it when it isn't going your way, seemingly. That kind of courage. Wavering a little at times, yes, because we all have doubts that attack us. We all have small fears that creep in. That is the nature of life. But that's what faith is all about. That's what courage is all about. To serve us when our doubts will not serve us well. Faith to overcome fear, and courage to overcome our doubts. Second, Napoleon said self-control. That, of course, is the very essence of life itself, is self-control. Because we all have this warfare going on. You know, it's going on in the world, the warfare between liberty and tyranny. In our own body, the warfare between health and illness, the struggle is on. Struggle between light and darkness, the struggle between good and evil. I call it opposites in conflict. And as soon as you're born into the world, as soon as you find yourself and discover yourself on this spinning planet headed somewhere, you know that this exists. To be a civilized society, we must drive the dark side of our nature into a small corner and let the positive side flourish.
And in the coming days, don't be surprised if God brings new opportunities across your path. Some of you are going to be offered a position that you feel is over your head. Or maybe you single people, God's going to bring somebody new into your life. You'll be tempted at first to play it safe. Think about all the reasons why you can't do it. You've been hurt in the past. You can't get into that new relationship. You're not qualified for that new position. And if you're going to experience God's best, you got to be willing to take a risk. You can't get stuck thinking that it can only happen one way.
This life that you're living is one long, big journey. And maybe you hit an obstacle on the way that slowed you down, or maybe put your goal on the back burner, but do not call yourself a quitter. You're already telling yourself that you're a quitter. You put that in your background, and I don't want to see that happen to you because you matter too much. You are not a quitter. You are not someone who gave up. You are simply someone who may have not been ready to face some of the demons that are in your background. Who may have not been ready enough to say, you know what, I love myself enough this time to believe myself enough to keep showing up for myself.
What would you do with your life if you had it to live over? What is one value, one deep commitment from which you would never budge? Are you proud of how you have been living your life? Have you explored your natural talents, your gifts, by enthusiastically trying a variety of activities? Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of us have so much talent and abilities, we just put them back on the back burner or just left them aside someplace. Never did anything with them, never brought them out here. What are you sitting on? What gifts are you sitting on? Have you resigned yourself to a life feeling that nothing can be done to change your future or your circumstances? Have you been afraid to try something different because you're afraid of how people will react to you or what they will think?
Early, we must learn to exercise self-control. Power is a wonderful thing, but it must be exercised properly. It must be exercised to benefit, not to destruction. So self-control is certainly necessary to be a strong leader, so that you can become the best example. The example of having your temper well managed, to having that dark side of your nature under control. The best example of choosing wise words and not being careless, that kind of control. Control of your appetite, control of your desires, so that they fit into the positive side of life and not the negative side. Then he said, a leader must have a keen sense of justice. How very true. Justice we become familiar with, even when we're small. When certain things that happened or were done to us that something told us that wasn't right. Someone did us wrong. We have that sense of right and wrong, and it starts very early. Then we have to have that sense of utilizing what's right and what's wrong so that we develop this sense of justice, this sense of being fair, this sense of being on the positive side, on the right side. To minimize a person's mistakes, they need to have this sense of justice. We have to have justice when we're building an organization. What's fair, what is a good balance, certain rules and regulations, so that all of us have a chance to fit within this framework of fairness, justice, and what's right. Otherwise, enterprise cannot work. Otherwise, we have what we call in the political sense anarchy, where there is no justice, when might is the order of the day, power is the order of the day, not the law, not the rule, not what's right, but power. And we would all dismiss that It's been a catastrophe in the last 6,000 years. The governments that resorted to power instead of democracy, that resorted to intimidation instead of freedom. And we all know the terrible toll that takes. But it takes a toll not only politically in a country or politically around the world, but it takes a toll even in enterprise. It takes a toll in school if a teacher is unfair. It takes a toll in working on a team where someone is unfair, or where the leadership is not fair in the administration of justice. So this is true. A keen sense of justice and what's fair and what's right. Part of this we have to learn as we go. You know, you don't have it all the first year. You haven't got it all the second year, the third year. After all the years that I've been around, both as a human being and as a business person, you're still, even at these years, trying to decide what's best, what's fair, what's right, to give balance to our life and to build on a firm foundation for the future. Here's another one, he said, definiteness of decision. Indecision is the thief of opportunity. If you don't decide, the opportunity could slip away. If you don't decide what you're going to do today, the day could get away and you're not very effective. To the best of your ability, have some idea, some good plan. Sure enough, the day escapes. And in the morning you say, let's see, what should I do now? In the afternoon you say, hey, time's getting away from me, what should I do now? And now most of the day is lost.
When I know I need to change something, what I do is I change it. I've had people that listen to the podcast and they've reached out to me over the past few years, and one of the main messages that they took and put into action was actually putting things into action. These are just normal people, but they're normal people that knew they needed to make a change, and they decided they were going to make a change, and then they made it. And that is what you can do too. If you have something to change, if you want to change something, change it. Change it now.
Find something that you can look at your life that you say, hey, I know I've got a problem in this area, being late. I need to take care of that. Procrastinating. I need to deal with that. Creating an imbalance in my life where I'm spending more time looking at television or having social fun and not spending enough time working on me. See, most people spend more time working on their jobs than they spend working on themselves. And whatever we achieve in life, whatever we create, whatever we're able to manifest comes out of the human mind.
So many times, guys, we get distracted by things that we either have no control of or matter nothing to our goals. I want to ask you guys tonight, just do a little favor. And I want you to write down things that you focused on today that held you back from being the person that you want to be. Did you worry about the behavior of someone else, something that you got no control over? Or did you stress about something that hasn't even happened yet? Did you give yourself negative vibes because you're worried about something that you have a fear over? And then I also want you to write down things that you focused on today that helped get you closer to the person that you want to be. Did you eat right? Did you exercise today? What are things that you focused on today that you know are going to make you a better version of yourself so that you can show up stronger tomorrow than you did today?
You've been given the dignity of choice. You don't have to repeat this year the same as last year. You can tear up last year's plan, develop a new plan. Now here's the choice on being a human being: to be part of all we were meant to be, or to be all, to strive for all, or half, or some. The choice is up to you to develop one skill or 10 skills. And this is all a matter of choice. And when someone says, no, you ought to learn 4, you got to resist all that, because this is personal dignity. And you don't want to destroy someone's dignity by doing all the oughts and then they feel reluctant to do it. Now we've got problems. Most of the day escapes not being utilized. It doesn't work for you simply because you didn't make those decisions early, at the early part of the day. The decisions we make in the early part of our life sometimes last for a lifetime. The early decisions that you make about what you're going to do with your life, those decisions are vitally important. If you neglect them and don't make them, sure enough, the time passes and the opportunity sometimes is diminished. And sometimes you spend a lot of time now catching up simply because you didn't make those early decisions. So it's the decisions at the first of the day, it's the decisions at the early part of the month, it's the decisions at the early part of the year that greatly determines what kind of year you're going to have. The decisions you make in the early days of your marriage, sometimes those are the decisions that affect the marriage for a lifetime. The decisions you make at the first chance you see opportunity, those decisions, what you're going to do with it, how far you're going to take it, what it's going to be meaning to you in the years to come. Those early decisions are vitally important. Then we need decisions to correct poor decisions, to overcome our mistakes. It's possible, of course, for all of us to make unwise decisions. And at the end of 1 year, at the end of 1 week, 1 month, or at the end of a few years, we say, that decision cost me too much. Cost me a lot of time, cost me a lot of money, cost me maybe a good relationship, cost me a chance to be productive. But as long as you're alive, there's still a chance to use new decision power to correct the mistakes of decisions that were bad in the past. All of us have the opportunity to do that, but I think Napoleon was right here too. You got to be definite in making decisions so that the opportunity doesn't pass you by. Take advantage. Here's the next one. Napoleon Hill said, a good leader has definite plans. How important that is. So here's what you should do. The lack of plans have lost a month or two, or you've lost a week or two, or maybe you've lost a year and you were 10% effective instead of 100%. Now's the time to change all that and start making some plans. You got to have some plans for your family, right? You got to take your family along. Don't leave them out. One of the challenges all of us have in making our plans is how to balance everything, to make sure that we don't regret at the end of the year, I spent too much time on that. I spent too much money. And then if you have, say, how can I not do that again? Construct some better plans so that you won't have any regrets at the end of a year to come, 5 years to come, 3 or 4, 5 years to come. But now for you, your plans to be financially secure. You got to have a good plan for your resources so that you find yourself secure regardless of what happens. One more on plans, and that is the plan for your personal development. The plan to be better this year than last year. The plan to take the classes, attend the workshops, do everything you possibly can to show personal progress, not just financial progress, not just the progress of having one more car or one more home, but the progress of personality, the progress of communication skills, the progress in how to deal with people, progress in using your influence so that it multiplies its power by 5 by 10 versus what it used to be. You need those kind of plans. A plan for personal growth, personal development. Next, Napoleon Hill had a good saying. It was something my father had and passed it on to me as a good philosophy. And here's what he said. A good leader has the habit of doing more than what he gets paid for. What an incredible philosophy this is. The habit of doing more than you get paid for. It's what we call the service that you put out like seeds in the ground that doesn't bring the harvest immediately, but the harvest is yet to come. It's called like putting out the capital in capitalism. Doing more than you get paid for means that you're getting ready for the next move up. Because if you do more than you get paid for, you've made an investment. The average person might think if I do more than the company requires, then they're ripping me off. I'm not getting paid for that extra time, that extra attention. But you must not view it that way. You must say, I'm getting there a little earlier, staying a little later, as an investment in my own personal future, because I want that kind of reputation. I want that kind of philosophy to work in my life. Do more than you get paid for, right? They've got the product, you've got the money, but you can't stop your investment there. Now you must develop the investment in time, effort, and energy in turning that new customer into a testimonial. And sometimes that's the most difficult work, the work after the sale. Because the sale might be fairly easy. Someone says, hey, I've been looking for this product, I need it, here's my money. But now you've got to stay with them, make sure they don't just buy the product, but that they use the product. And that they don't just use the product, they keep using the product. That's the work after the sale. But if you learn to make that kind of an investment and do more than you get immediately paid for, that kind of investment is so powerful. So you do more than you get paid for up front. It's happened for me, making the investment. When I first started lecturing, I talked to high school classes, college classes, service clubs, and I gave it all away. I went and talked for free. Someone said, Mr. Owen, would you come and do this breakfast talk? I said, sure. Could you do this luncheon talk for this service club? I said, of course. And all of that in the beginning was for free, primarily because I'd made my fortune. You know, I didn't need the money, but I did it for free. But look what it's made for me by giving that kind of service in those early days. And finally, it led to business and led to an enterprise. And I was giving the seminar all those years ago here in Los Angeles, and Mark Hughes was in my audience. So what you don't get paid for, don't worry about that. Just render the service with the vision of the future that it'll come back multiplied if you have this kind of habit, this kind of philosophy. Next, Napoleon Hill talks about personality. You need a pleasing personality. There's many parts to your personality. One is your working personality. You know, the kind of behavior, the kind of attitude that you need, especially in the public. Some things you can kind of get by with being a little careless, maybe in private, but in public, where it counts so much in your paycheck, it counts so much in building your business for the future, your own personality. But here's what you also must remember. You develop your personality in private so that it serves you well in the public. Sometimes we get the mistaken idea, I can be careless with just these few and be more careful when I have 1,000. But see, that doesn't work that way. Careless with a few, sure enough, that will creep into your presentation for 1,000 people. You say, well, I'm only talking to 2 people, it doesn't matter much. That's when it really matters. Because if you'll practice well there, using your personality, using your influence, to get someone's attention, to get them to listen, to get them to participate, the kind of personality that someone says, I'd like to be around this person. They're unusual. They're not like the average person I meet on my everyday experience. That kind of personality. But you've got to practice it behind the scenes. You've got to practice it one-on-one. And if you're effective one-on-one, 1-on-3, 1-on-5, I promise you, that will get you ready to now perform with the kind of personality, the kind of charisma that wins people when you're in front of 500 people, 1,000 people, 5,000. So this is a good point, working on your personality. Here's the best gift you can give someone, and that's the gift of attention. Attention is so powerful. So, same thing you can learn to do. Utilize your personality, utilize your influence, give people the gift of attention. Next, Napoleon Hill said a leader needs sympathy and understanding. We have to develop that early in our lives. All of our lives, we have to look at those that are less fortunate than we are, those who need a helping hand, and especially now we learn to look at those who need an opportunity, those who need a change in their health, those who need a change in their life and in their lifestyle. It's this kind of sympathy and understanding that drove Mark Hughes to construct the company. It took that kind of understanding, that kind of sympathy, that kind of deep emotional feeling. Then Mark understood what it meant to be poor. He understood what it meant not to have. He understood what it meant to be short on finances, on resources. He understood what it meant to lack full formal education. He knew all of those lacks. And instead of crying about it, he said, what I will do is change it for myself, and then I'll help other people that have the same challenge. Lack of education, lack of the money, lack of the resources, lack of good health, faced with all kinds of difficulties they can't solve. I'll get mine solved, and then I'll be strong enough and have the skills to where I can help other people. That kind of leadership quality is so powerful. That kind of understanding. Here's the next one. A leader must have, Napoleon said, a mastery of the details. How very true. All can be lost with just a couple of missing details. The drama is in the details. Someone says, you know, I lost 30 pounds. Well, 30 pounds is 30 pounds, but that's not the drama. The drama is, where were you before? Now someone begins to give us some of the details. And then after they've lost the weight, now how they feel. Now their self-confidence has been restored. Now they feel better about themselves. The drama is in the details. But this is also important in the details of your day, the details of your business, the details of good communication. Master the details. Now here's the next three. Willingness to assume full responsibility. Mark Hughes says, what happened to me might not have been my responsibility, but what I do about it is my full responsibility. I've had some things, some people did me wrong. In his first couple of business experiences, he was done wrong. Some people ran off with the money. He was left holding the bag. But he said, that's what happened. And I was not responsible for what happened, but I am responsible for saying to myself, now, what am I going to do about what's happened? If a hailstorm destroys the farmer's crop, he wasn't responsible for that. But his responsibility now begins when the hailstorm is over, when he asks the question of himself, what should I do now? Now that this catastrophe is over, now that the damage is done, now what should I do about it? And a philosophy I've taught all these years, it's not what happens to you that determines your future. It's what you do about what happens that determines your future. And this is a major part of it, accepting full responsibility. If you've got an organization, you're conducting meetings, and you're the leader, the responsibility ends with you. Someone else may mess up, make some mistakes, still your responsibility. Some things over which you have no control, understandable. But what you do about it now, how you fix it, the diplomacy you use, the strategy you use, that's the kind of responsibility now that depends on you. Also, you've got to be responsible for your future. Nobody's going to fix it. No one else is going to design it. No one else is going to come along and say, hey, I will make sure it all works well for you. You've got to take all the input. You've got to take all the testimonials, all the teaching, all the training, all the influence. Then you've got to have the responsibility of designing your life. You can design a life of prosperity, or you can design a life just to coast and get by. The responsibility belongs to you. Next is cooperation. Ideas, we take advantage of each other's input. We take advantage of each other's enthusiasm. We take advantage of each other's testimonial. And we take advantage of each other's willingness to grow. In those early days, Mark got the group together, Jerry Shatanovich, Doug Stuntz, the rest, and made some plans to cooperate. Said, no telling what kind of powerful meetings we can have if we work together. No telling how many people we can affect, even right away, if we work together. You do this part, you do this part, I'll do this part, we'll make it work together, and we'll get the ball rolling. There's an ancient phrase that says, if 2 or 3 agree, nothing is impossible. If they agree on the same project, if they agree on the same vision, if they agree on how to get there, I'm telling you, nothing is impossible. Nothing can stand in their way. Just 2 or 3. If we cooperate, there's nothing we can't do. There isn't anyone we can't touch with this incredible story. Cooperation. That's why I'm here. Send out some ideas. Give you some notes to take, something to think about and ponder, something to talk about with the people that you associate with and are building your business. That kind of cooperation is going to make this a powerful year. But it'll get us to much more than just those numbers. It'll get us to a place of honor, respect, prestige, influence, feeling good about ourselves for the hard work that we're doing, cooperating with each other. Now, here's the last one. Napoleon Hill said, a major attribute of leadership is vision. Vision is in many parts. One, a vision for your own course to follow. A vision for you, for yourself. A vision for your financial future. A vision for your health. A vision for your wealth. A vision for you to latch onto and make something out of. A vision for your family. Because vision must now lift others as well as ourselves. Guess what our family is counting on? That we'll be able to see things that at first they cannot see. That we'll be able to look further into the future than perhaps they will be able to look. The same is true with your organization, the people that are around you. They're counting on your vision. Perhaps you've been there a little longer than they have. Maybe you've been there a lot longer than they have. And they will look to you to help them see things that they can't see in the beginning. And if you will do that, develop that attribute of leadership, I'm telling you, you'll have such a dramatic effect on your organization, it will be unbelievable. A vision for yourself, a vision for your family, a vision for your organization, a vision for the people that you're close to.